Hello everyone, and I'm extremely hesitant to make this video. I know it's going to bring out every single troll, every single Richard Allen is innocent supporter you could possibly imagine, but I'm going to make this anyway because I came across a website called rickallenjustice.com, and it just makes me sick to my stomach after reading through it. So before I begin, I want to make everybody aware that if you're new to my page, first of all, this is going to be a long video. So if you're not ready for that, come back and watch later. But I want you to be aware that unlike some other channels, I'm a decorated journalist who's been doing this for 29 years. I've produced leads in this case for detectives. I have worked for a private investigation agency doing research work. So I have numerous awards as well for my work in investigative research. And while I'm not going to spend time debunking every single thing that is on this website I came across called rickallenjustice.com, I'm going to go through a lot of it, little by little, and explain a few things and get a few things off of my mind. So if you'd like to join me, please do. Otherwise, today, for those of you who are new, we're discussing the February 13th, 2017 homicides of Abigail Williams and Liberty German near the Monon High Bridge in rural Delphi, Indiana. Richard M. Allen has been convicted of these crimes. And just to give you a little insight here, this is Richard M. Allen right here.
I feel like there's a witness that said it was you out there.
Dear, I don't know.
Like, how did they know it was you? So they said they showed her thing. And I'm like, of course you were out there.
If they see me out there, they see me out there, dear. And I told
Were you
them.
on the bridge?
I told them I was on the bridge. I went out to the first trestle.
Oh, okay.
That first
I
thing
don't
that.
remember you telling me that. So I told you weren't on it. But I didn't.
It doesn't, hon, you're not in any trouble. You didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. Huh?
I mean, look at how he just gaslights her. You never told me you were out on the bridge. Oh, oops, I forgot to leave out that detail. Anyway, on to the rickallenjustice.com website. I took screenshots so I could discuss all of these points. They profess that Allen was railroaded. They wrongfully state that there's corruption and all kinds of illegal behavior going on with police officers, with prosecutors involved in this case, fabricating evidence, just all kinds of nonsense that makes me sick to my stomach, that revictimizes the families of Abby and Libby. So let's just take a look one at a time here if we can, okay? The case for Rick Allen's innocence. The case against Richard Allen is riddled with flaws, the website says. From coerced confessions to questionable evidence, serious doubts remain about his guilt. Do they, though? Do they for rational, intelligent people? Anyway, we've got coerced confessions under extreme duress. Found naked, covered in feces, and psychotic in April 2023, Allen was medicated with antipsychotics. Video of evidence showed him catatonic hours after a psychiatrist claimed he was lucid, casting grave doubt on statements used to convict him. So they were under extreme duress, huh? It's not like there was somebody over his shoulder for any of these. It's not like there was somebody with a gun to his head. Furthermore, some of these confessions were prior to him being medicated with antipsychotics, which is something that this website completely leaves out. 2, no forensic evidence linking Allen to the crime. No DNA, fingerprints, footprints, or trace evidence from the crime scene were found on Allen, his home, or vehicle. The prosecution's case leaned on contested witness accounts and a questionable bullet, leaving a glaring absence of concrete proof. So, the no DNA thing. Let's have a conversation about the no DNA thing. Everybody thinks that because this was such a hands-on crime, that there had to have been DNA evidence left by Richard Allen. Oh, it was a brutal use of a knife, and that there has to be DNA there. They didn't find DNA in his car. Well, gee, maybe because he had 6 years to clean his car out, first of all. But as for the crime scene itself, well, let's just take a look at something here, shall we? Okay. There's something here called the New Haven study, and this is just one of numerous studies that I found online, okay? Just one of numerous ones. It's a 2007 University of New Haven study, DNA and homicide clearance. What's really going on, okay? And in this study, it comes up with some interesting conclusions and determinations. Let's take a look right here. The summary of this study stated, there is no doubt that the analysis of DNA evidence from crime scenes can be a powerful tool in determining the identity of the subjects responsible for that crime. However, the current analysis, and this studied thousands of cases, okay, throws some doubt on exactly how useful DNA can be in clearing homicide cases. The overall percentage of cases that have a DNA analysis available to them pre-arrest is 6.7%. So only 6.7% of crimes in this study even had DNA available. When we account for the number of cases which have no investigative need for forensic evidence, this percentage rises to 9.3%. Only 22.7% of those whodunit cases which collected evidence likely to yield a DNA analysis had a DNA analysis available to them pre-arrest. So only 22% of those cases, 22.7%, which collected evidence likely to yield a DNA analysis, had DNA analysis available to them prior to arrest, meaning they're not able to get useful DNA because it's partial DNA, tainted DNA, incomplete DNA. So DNA, despite what you may see on TV, is way more often than not left at homicide crime scenes. People think every time there's something there, there's got to be a piece of hair. There's got to be this that's collectible. There's got to be that. When the actual reality from studies shows that the majority of the time, there's not, even in hands-on violent crimes. And that's important when people are saying, well, how can there not be DNA at the website or at the crime scene? Disputed ballistics evidence. The prosecution hinged on an unspent bullet allegedly cycled through Allen's gun, but their own expert initially couldn't confirm a match. The defense challenged the comparison method as unreliable, and the state never sought independent verification. Well, contrary to what that states there, they actually did match the extractor marks on his bullet to countless other similar weapons, and guess which the only one it matched was? You guessed it, the one belonging to Richard Allen. Shock, shock. And just bear with me because I have to keep pulling these up off of here because StreamYard only allows me to put up a certain number of these at a time. Let's go to the next page here. We've got Allen's presence at timeline and the trails. Vague witness accounts failed to definitively place Allen at the crime scene during the murders. Well, that's funny because he placed himself at the crime scene. So I don't know what kind of disingenuous bullshit that is for this website to say that no one definitively placed Allen at or near the crime scene during the murders. He told Dan Doolin he was there between 1:30 and 3:30 p.m. that day. They have cell phone data. They have his car, or a car that matches his on the Hoosier Harbor Store camera during that time. And they also have, like I said, Allen, as you saw at the beginning of the video, admitting that during that time he was out there on the bridge, according to him, on the trestle, right around the time of the crimes. So that's just completely disingenuous for this website to claim that. Okay, Allen's mention of a van claimed as killer-only knowledge was widely known and lacked exclusivity. This claims that the van that spooked Allen, that drove under the private drive, was not killer-only knowledge, because the defense team stated that there were something like 28 or 29 accounts in the evidence that they were given mentioning a white van. But those accounts, most of them did not mention any sort of a white van under the bridge. Those weren't eyewitnesses accounts of people saying, oh, we saw a white van driving under the Monon High Bridge on the private drive. No, those were just generalized white van statements from other people saying that they saw a white van over here, over there, on Route 25, other places at a parking lot. So white vans are notorious. They're the most reported type of vehicle involved by eyewitnesses in crimes. They've studied this, okay? So a lot of those could be false information, but for him to state that he stopped his crime because he saw a specific van, a white van, coming home on that private drive, and that's why he ended up killing them when his intention was to commit a sexual assault, that is, in fact, something only the killer would have known, that person. So it's just coincidence that he saw a white van, and that white van, there also happens to be a similar van that's at the property that goes to the private drive. That's very specific, okay? Then we have Sarah Harbaugh's insistent account of a man on the highway is too unreliable to incriminate Allen. Well, while it may not incriminate him definitively, it's unreliable. I don't know what makes her eyewitness testimony unreliable, because everything I've seen about her testimony and everything I've read shows that she was very adamant about what she saw, that she saw somebody with blood on their jeans that was muddied up, that was walking on the north side of County Road 300. Just, again, that's sketchy. Here we go. Allen's vehicle identification. The late identification of Allen's car was criticized as a desperate attempt to fit evidence to the suspect. No, it was a Hoosier Harvester camera that captured what was definitively determined to be, and there's tons of videos out here. Go watch the Gray Hughes one, how he overlays a Ford Focus to what they captured on the Hoosier Harvester video. It's a dead match to that year of Allen's Ford Focus. Okay, folks? And this Rick Allen Justice website, furthermore, goes on. They even put, later on the website, if you go look, they put an inaccurate time on there. They state that Allen was seen on that video at like 14:21 hours, not accounting for the fact, probably because they didn't do their research like they should have on that Innocence website. It doesn't account for the fact that that camera was 50-something minutes fast. So they're on their website providing inaccurate timestamp information as more proof of Allen's innocence, which, again, just completely disingenuous to create a website that's putting false information out there, like that one is yet again in that instance. Okay? Let's move on, shall we? The defense argument. Defense attorney Baldwin argued the van detail was not exclusive. Yeah, we just discussed that. Witness inconsistencies in Brad Weber's accounts of his whereabouts, questioning his reliability. The defense noted that Weber brought text messages to his police interview despite allegedly not knowing why he was questioned. This suggests he anticipated needing an alibi, further undermining his credibility. Well, it suggests no such thing. That's quite a leap and assumption on their part to say just because he had text messages that he brought to his police interview, showing that he, anticipated needing an alibi. Well, furthermore, those text messages did provide an alibi for him. So why even put that on the website? If the text messages were investigated by investigators and it provided him with an alibi, then how does that help Allen's case? Newsflash, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. Let's move on to the next one. Forgive me, I may have already put this up here. No, here we go. The defense attacked Harbaugh's credibility, pointing into inconsistencies in her account during closing arguments. Now, here's the great part, everybody. While specific discrepancies were not detailed by the defense, The challenge suggests her testimony was unreliable or vague, weakening its impact. No, actually, it improves its impact if you're the defense team and you say that there's discrepancies, but you don't bother mentioning in your cross-examination or talking about it what the discrepancies were. Okay. No DNA found in Allen's vehicle. Mr. Allen retained the same Ford Focus that he was driving on the day of February 13th, 2017. During their investigation, law enforcement analyzed his vehicle for traces of DNA evidence and found none. Well, again, that was, let's see, 5.5 years after the fact. He could have had his car professionally cleaned. He could have washed his jacket or something off in the river after he committed these crimes. He could have done any number of things. He could have, put it in a trash bag that he brought with him that was in the trunk of his car, anticipating doing this. There's any number of reasons that they might not have found DNA. And again, I just cited that study that showed that there's only usable DNA in 22.7% of thousands of cases that they studied. So that doesn't necessarily mean that, he got the girl's blood all over him. I mean, I know there's muddy and bloody on his jeans, but he could have got to his car, taken those clothes off, put them in a bag. He could have, had his car, like I said, professionally cleaned. He could have done that himself. He could have done any number of things that would have explained why they don't find DNA evidence in his vehicle 5.5 years later. So again, there's logical explanations for that as well. And here we go. Let's move on to another one. Allen's vehicle identification. The prosecution claims surveillance video from the Hoosier Harvest store showed Allen's black 2016 Ford Focus, asserting it was the only such vehicle registered in Carroll County at the time. Well, no, that's not what it asserts. The prosecution never said, oh, well, this was the only Ford Focus that was registered there. No, they said that Allen drove a Ford Focus and that they have a Ford Focus that's matching the same year and description on the camera. They never said that it was the only vehicle registered. So that's more disingenuous bullshit by this website. Let's be honest. That was never said by the prosecution, asserting it was the only such vehicle registered. The prosecution never said that. They claimed that the timing of Mr. Allen's vehicle seen driving away from the area at 14:21 on February 13, 2017 provides irrefutable evidence of his presence at the relevant time. No, again, they're trying to establish circumstantial and physical evidence that matches the time that Allen was there and that matches his vehicle description. They're not saying that provides irrefutable evidence. They're saying that's one piece of the puzzle. And furthermore, here we have the bullshit timestamp that they've put on here. They put that it happened at 2:21 when investigators clearly stated at trial, and it was accepted by the defense, that camera was 50-something minutes fast, which puts Allen there at roughly 1:30-something p.m. upon his arrival going down County Road 300 North, not 14:21, as this website wrongly states, because they just assumed instead of doing their research like people like me and you do, wrongly assumed that was the accurate time. So again, more disingenuous bullshit from the rickallenjustice.com website. Moving on. Voice identification on Libby's phone. Indiana State Police Officer Brian Harshman testified that after listening to numerous calls involving Allen, he identified Allen's voice as the one saying "guys down the hill" on Libby's phone recording. And I'll have a different video about this eventually to where you can listen for yourself. The website even has the voice recording, et cetera, et cetera. So they're not doing themselves any favors by putting that on their website. But here you go. The defense argument. Voice identification by an officer deeply involved in investigation without independent forensic analysis is inherently subjective. The defense's broader emphasis on the absence of forensic links implies this testimony lacks scientific rigor and could be biased. Could it be biased? Sure. But when you take the totality of the circumstances are important. It's like a puzzle. You put all the pieces together. You have Allen admitting he was there, on the bridge. You have video showing a car matching his car's description, showing up at 1:30 something p.m. or roughly on video. You have the bullet matching his, which we'll get into more of that later. So the totality, okay? Again, the totality. And any of you who've listened to any of Alan's many, many now publicized interviews, from his interrogation, from his phone calls with his wife, from his confessions, I mean, can any of you rule out that that's Alan's voice and say, no, that's definitely not Alan's voice on the Guys Down the Hill video that Liberty German took? Because I can't. Because when I listen to it, it sure as shit sounds like it's his voice to me. It's got that same deep raspy sort of sound to it that he has when he's talking. It's got a real specific kind of accent, dialect to it. If you don't think that that's Rick Allen's voice on there, or at the very least, if you don't think that it can be, I don't know what to tell you. You're hearing something completely different than the rest of us. So while that website may be right and that there could be inherent bias, you cannot listen to that and tell me that there's no way that's Rick Allen's voice, because it sounds just like it. The totality of the evidence, everybody. Okay? That's what we're talking about here. And that's what we continue to talk about. Slide number 7. New information since the trial. In March 2025, the full Bridge Guy video, as extracted from Liberty German's phone, was released by Richard Allen's trial attorney. This highly anticipated piece of critical evidence stirred a great deal of online discussion. You can watch it and assess for yourself if the captured voice is enough to convict someone beyond a reasonable doubt. They're insinuating that it was only the voice comparison that was what convicted him. Again, more disingenuous bullshit, because that's not the only thing that convicted him. It wasn't just somebody's opinion or speculation that convicted him. It was the totality of the circumstances and the physical and circumstantial evidence. And here's another one that just pisses me off. The full Bridge Guy video also provides more data from which a height analysis could be performed. Experts have not yet carried out this analysis formally. How the fuck do you know? How do you know what the FBI and what all kinds of other people and places? I mean, I know they subcontracted, I think it was NASA and other places even, to try to clean up the video for them. So they did an awful lot of forensic stuff that these people aren't privy to. Have not carried out this analysis yet. But it's clear to many that the man spotted on the video on the Monon High Bridge is a lot taller than Richard Allen's 5'4" height. According to what? According to what? It is clear to many taller than 5'4". I just can't. You know, one of the girls that walked past Allen stated, and she was only about like 4'9" or 4'10", I think, and stated that when she walked past the Bridge Guy, that she came up to just over his shoulder. And he had boots or shoes on, so that would put that person at 5'4" to 5'6". You know, that's an actual eyewitness that said Bridge Guy, she came up to just above his shoulder. So, you know, you're looking at, 7, 8, 9 inches more than a like 4'9" or 4'10" height approximately. That puts it right in the range for somebody if they have shoes on or boots. Again, this is just that they're really stretching the truth here and just making a lot of assumptions. It's clear to many. And then they state that there's well, then why hasn't somebody conducted an actual forensic analysis from the defense team, and why wasn't that brought to trial? Probably because they know any forensic analysis would have shown that the guy was 5'4" or a little bit taller with shoes on, and that it actually would have harmed their client's chances of being acquitted. Moving on. Again, the reason I'm so upset about this, everybody, and the reason you hear me sighing and huffing and puffing is because you're playing a dangerous game. When you are disingenuous and ignore certain facts, when somebody has been convicted of killing 2 teenage girls, it's a dangerous game you're playing, potentially putting that person back out onto the streets when you're only telling a portion of the truth in your claim that this person is innocent. Forgive me here, I'm not clicking the proper buttons to upload the rest of the image files. Here we go. Okay. Maybe I'm skipping ahead here, but one of the things on the website that they said was that Liberty German's cell phone had activity at 5-something p.m. and 10-something p.m. that showed the headphone jack was being plugged into her phone, suggesting potentially that somebody else was at the crime scene tampering with it. The reality is, as you'll see here from this AI overview, and I know AI isn't a direct, perfect science, but I use it to more clearly explain what the other possible reasons are. And scientists testified to this at the trial, I believe, as well, why this could have happened and why it would happen briefly. Now, if it were plugged in and it was something that stayed plugged in, it would have noted that it was plugged in for, minutes or hours at a time. Instead, it was just brief, time stamped 2 different times as headphone jack activity on her cell phone at the crime scene. False headphone jack activity refers to situations where a device like a phone or computer incorrectly detects that a headphone is plugged in, even if it's not, or vice versa, causing audio output to be routed to the headphone jack, even when no headphone is connected. This can lead to issues like no sound coming out of the speakers or unintended audio output from the headphones. Here's a breakdown of potential causes and solutions. Causes: dust or debris. Well, when we see photos that have emerged of the cell phone at the crime scene, we can see that it's just actually caked and buried in some leaves and dust and dirt and debris, just as it says here. Dust and debris can build up inside the headphone jack and interfere with the connection. Software glitches. Sometimes the device's software can get confused and misinterpret the headphone jack status. Just simple phone error. Physical damage and hardware issues. There's any number of reasons why that can briefly happen. Okay. And moving on here, I'm trying to go through these as quick as I can. Okay, the website goes on to say, there are many ways you can support the Richard Allen Justice Campaign. Whether you're an individual, organization, student, or professional, your actions can make a difference in overturning a potential wrongful conviction. Potential? I thought you were convinced it was a wrongful conviction. rickallenjustice.com. I thought you were convinced, so now it's just a potential wrongful conviction, huh? Individuals, spread awareness. Highlight critical issues like the coerced confessions. Again, here we are claiming the confessions were coerced when you have no proof that was the case. In fact, when I've watched and listened to most of his confessions, and any psychologist that I've watched discuss this case and his confessions, and I've watched many channels with psychologists discussing this, stated that when you're in psychosis, as they allege, you don't have slow, methodical, drawn out confessions to somebody. His confessions sounded completely rational to me. Every single one of them I've listened to, and in fact, I posted a video on this earlier showing one of them where he seems extremely upset and exacerbated that his wife won't believe him. Just he let out an audible sighs. I've listened to all of them. They don't sound like that's a man in distress at all. He sounds like he's wanting to get some things off of his mind. And any rational person that listens to those confessions really should probably be drawing the same conclusion, because that they don't come across as a man whose psychosis is when you're detached with reality completely. These are methodical, slow, detailed confessions, not some raving, ranting lunatic. So they say to spread awareness, they encourage people to write to Rick Allen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Share critical information with Rick's appellate attorneys. If you have specific information or evidence relating to the murders of Abby and Libby that you feel is important to uncovering the truth, send it to Rick's appellate attorneys. It will be handled sensitively. And, later on the website, and I don't post this up here, but they go on to ask people if they have to create they encourage them to create burner accounts to report things. But if your information is credible, why create burner accounts? If you want to be all above board and open and transparent, why would this website encourage people to create burner accounts? What are you afraid of? If you have information that shares the truth, do it above board, like people like myself do. Do it above board, like actual police investigators do. Don't do it hiding in the shadows. Don't be cowardly. If you have actual information, put your name next to it, come forward to police or investigators, and let them investigate it. Or to his attorney. Like, well, I don't understand the reason for having to hide. Organized discussion. It's all college-based too. Host campus events such as panels or film screenings to discuss false confessions, wrongful convictions, and the Delphi case. Invite legal experts, psychologists, or campaign representatives to speak. Students in law, criminology, or forensic science can research topics like the Reed technique, which they claim that they used against him. But again, countless confessions he made were not under duress of any kind, as they allege. Then they encourage people to form student groups, use Allen's case as a focal point. I mean, can you imagine? Can you guys imagine if you're Abby and Libby's family members, and you know that they've caught the right guy, and you have to, after going through all you've already been through, go through people trying to make organized, concerted efforts to not only be disingenuous and only share part of the truth on their innocence website, but to want to free a double convicted teenage child killer who confessed over 60 times. Imagine what kind of headspace you have to be in to think that's a good idea. I'm sorry, it makes me sick to my stomach. It really, really does. Because it re-victimizes the family members. And it's not okay. And here we go. They take it even further. Influencers. Oh, let's do something because everybody else told us to do it, instead of sticking to the facts. Media and influencers, journalists, podcasters, or bloggers. Yeah, okay, I'm media, and I'm media here being responsible, okay, and speculating based on known facts and pieces of the puzzle and totality of the evidence, instead of sharing inaccurate information or parts of the truth or bullshit. Exposing trial flaws such as Judge Gull's conduct. Well, I'm sorry to tell you all, but you can smash Judge Gull's conduct all you want. The Supreme Court of Indiana allowed her to remain on the case. So whether you like it or not, the Supreme Court of Indiana thought her conduct, anything you disagree with, wasn't egregious enough to kick her off the case. Were there possible minor procedural things that went on that she could have done a little differently? Perhaps. Does that mean she mishandled the case or conducted conduct that was illegal or jeopardized this man's right to a fair trial? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In the end, they had ample opportunity to bring forward any information that showed somebody else beside Richard Allen committed this crime. And the defense team, what did they do instead? They told you Odinists did this. Odinists in a ritual sacrifice. Yet nobody saw these Odinists on the Hoosier Harvest Store camera that saw Richard Allen's car. None of the 4 teenage girls walking down the trail passed any of this group of Odinists. And who would march as part of their plan? And I showed in my video I posted yesterday or the day before. There's nobody in Liberty German's video in the still shots that I took that we can see that's visible at least that was waiting at the bottom of the hill on the private drive for them. Okay, there's still shots you can take from that video, and nobody is waiting at the bottom of the private drive for them. Not Odinists, not somebody in a van, not anybody, except the person believed to be Richard Allen marching them down the hill. Okay? Furthermore, why would somebody, in order to commit a ritual sacrifice, in what world would it be a good idea? What world would it be a good idea for somebody wanting to commit a ritual sacrifice? Use your critical thinking skills to march 2 girls across an icy cold creek, even though it was like a 50-degree day. That creek was still freezing cold. In what world would that be a great plan? Yeah, let's march them across a creek first, up a huge muddy embankment, and then commit the sacrifice after that, instead of finding a way to lure them without having to do it. You know, you could kidnap them, you could do any number of things, but no, let's march them across a creek instead to commit our ritual sacrifice. Does that make sense to any of you? Of course not, because it's total bullshit. Total bullshit. It's dumbfounding to me, everybody, the things that certain people will believe. People need to get off of Netflix and stop watching documentaries and think that police are always wrong. And then here we go. This is the best part. And we're getting here to where we'll wrap it up in about 10 minutes or so, I think, 15 minutes. Who is Richard Allen? The website goes on to say, Rick Matthew Allen, also known to his friends and family as Ricky, spent over 16 years quietly woven into the life of Delphi. I love the intricate wording they use to try and paint him like he's a saint. Indiana. Before his 2022 arrest and 2024 conviction in the widely publicized Delphi case, Rick was known as a friendly face behind the CVS pharmacy counter, a devoted husband and father, and a regular at the local pub. To neighbors and acquaintances, he was a heck of a nice guy, someone who blended in completely, living a life that by all outward appearances was stable, familiar, and unremarkable. Unremarkable, you say, huh? Unremarkable. Was it unremarkable that after he left his jobs working at Walmart, that there were people who came forward on other channels claiming they worked with Rick and alleged that Rick was engaging in inappropriate behavior around him, to the point where, and we don't have records of this because they're employee records, but alleging, these are firsthand alleged sources, and I've posted these videos on my channel. Jolene's story, other stories that people have come forward with and shared, claiming that Allen was not a saint at all around them at that other job. And there's privacy things that go on and other reasons why we don't have access to his employee file, obviously. But these are stories that are circulating out there from people claiming that they worked with Allen and that he wasn't so innocent. And let me ask you this. If he was so innocent, why does he have a history of depression, mental illness that led to him excessively drinking one night, and the police and an ambulance coming to his house after the murders, to where he had to be taken for observation overnight in the hospital? We have all kinds of videos of him drinking. He, by his own admission to the forensic psychologist, Dr. Monica Walla, that interviewed him in prison, that Allen admitted to being a, quote, problem drinker and to having a severe history of depression. Does that sound like a normal life to you? A normal, happy, oh, nothing's wrong in my life, to where you have to have the police called at your house because you've drank to excess and had some sort of what appears to be a mental or alcohol-induced episode to where you need to be taken away to the hospital? Is that a normal, quiet life of a family man Does that happen in all of your lives all the time? Do you get hauled off to a hospital, everybody? Do you admit to psychologists numerous times that you killed 2 teenage girls? Do you lie to your wife and tell her you were out of the trails that day, but don't tell her that you were on the bridge until after you've already been arrested for this crime or implicated in this crime? Is that what a normal, honest, caring family man does? I ask you. Yeah, sure it is. And here we have this again, a familiar face at CVS. They're just trying to humanize him instead of portraying him as the monster that he is. After leaving Walmart, Rick transitioned into healthcare, taking a job at CVS Pharmacy, first in Peru, and there's that Peru thing again. We can't make the connection between him and anybody else in Peru, even though I know detectives have tried to. In February 2018, he officially became a licensed pharmacy technician, a role requiring discretion, organization, and interpersonal care. So they're saying that just because he had a role that required discretion and organization, he couldn't possibly be a killer. Well, you know who else had organization and discretion? Gary Ridgway, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, BTK killer. They all led organized lives requiring discretion that nobody knew about. Nobody knew about until later on. So let's stop the bullshit and quit acting like that just because you have a stable job that requires some sort of responsibility, that automatically makes you innocent of a crime. Again, more disingenuous bullshit from the rickallenjustice.com website. He didn't look anything like that sketch, the website says. On October 28th, 2022, Richard Allen was arrested in connection with the murders, etc. Many who knew Rick and those following the case closely are convinced the whole truth had been told. He didn't look anything like that sketch. Okay, well, first of all, as Doug Carter repeatedly stated, a sketch is not a photograph, okay? And what's interesting is when you overlap the two sketches, it looks an awful lot like Allen. And even if you only take the first sketch, okay, Allen had a goatee going at the time, to the best of our knowledge. And that sketch had a goatee. And it looked, in that first sketch, like it could have been some middle-aged person, which is what it wound up being. I don't think that the sketch, the first one they put out, was anything necessarily dissimilar to what the eyewitnesses thought they saw or what he looked like. I don't think it's that far off. Is it a perfect match? No. But is it close enough to, I mean, again, you're not going to convict anybody on a sketch. So I don't, like, that's just a tool being used to try to identify a suspect based on generalizations and somebody's memory. So the fact that the sketch doesn't look like a picture-perfect version of Richard Allen's face doesn't mean that it's not him. That's more disingenuous bullshit. It's a sketch based on what people remember, and in that sketch, you have the goatee, you have him looking middle-aged. Again, these are teenage girls describing what they saw. Okay? It's not going to be an exact match. They didn't take a photograph with their brain that you can wire up to and say, oh, let's print that up. That's definitely Richard Allen. Just, again, complete lunacy. And I've only got a couple more to share here, everybody. The state says it has a confession. The tapes suggest something else entirely. Well, in my opinion, no, they don't. The full audio of the 7 recently released recorded pretrial detention phone calls, which the state relied on in its conviction of Allen, is available at the bottom of the post. In April 2023, CVS pharmacy technician Allen told his wife over a monitored prison phone line, I did it. I don't know why, because maybe I did it. I think I did. At first glance, the words seem damning, an apparent confession to a brutal crime that has haunted the Midwest for years. But listen more closely and a troubling pattern emerges. Richard Allen was not speaking with certainty, but with confusion. Well, that's a matter of opinion. What about all the other 50-something times he confessed? What about the time he confessed numerous times with details to his prison psychologist? What about the other times he confessed calmly to his wife? What about just the time that he confessed to his mother-in-law calmly on the phone? Let's quit acting like that was the only time Richard Allen confessed. In one of those confessions, Richard Allen stated that very specifically he intended it to be a sexual assault and that he didn't want the girls to suffer, so he had to kill them, etc., etc., all kinds of details about what he did. And that he marched them across the creek, etc., etc. So there's not just one confession. I mean, they're cherry picking one thing here. And one other thing that I find really, really interesting was the forensic psychologist, while he was in jail, one of them, the one I mentioned, Dr. Monica Walla, who testified at trial. She testified at trial that when Richard Allen was eating his own feces and behaving bizarrely in his cell, and these are her own words at the trial, stated that Richard Allen feigned, F-E-I-G-N-E-D, feigned these things. Well, what does feigned mean? It means, if you go and look it up in the dictionary, that it is simulated, insincere, or pretended. So in the opinion of this licensed clinical psychologist, Allen's behavior during those times was insincere and pretended. This is somebody who studies and does this for a living, claiming this in front of a jury at trial. Okay, that's not just me saying that. This is a licensed psychologist that was routinely speaking with him, that took his confessions, that monitored him, that knew intricate details of his life, his background, and his behavior. Okay? It's not just some random Joe off the streets saying this. So, what are we to learn from all of this? Well, I'll tell you what I think we're here to learn from all of this. We're here to learn that we're experiencing a cultural phenomenon right now in our society. I don't know if it's from watching too many Netflix videos. I don't know if it's from all the police brutality stuff that went on in the country, whether it be with George Floyd and other things, where people automatically think that just because they're seeing cases of wrongful convictions brought up in documentaries, or there is violence going on involving police, that all police are automatically bad people. They're out to frame everybody. I've seen people say that Richard Allen was framed, the bullet there was planted, but nobody goes and tries to make their frame job happen 5.5 years after fact. I mean, even at Barbara McDonald, who wrongfully stated on TV, on court TV, that the bullet found at the crime scene wasn't found until days later, when in fact, we now know that's a lie as well. How do we know? Because there's court papers and testimony that that bullet was collected on February 14th, 2014, the same day the girls were found. Okay, so you have mainstream media lying about that too, that it was collected on the same day that it was found, the girls were found, and bagged into evidence, not days later. So there's people left and right out there just making shit up, lying to you, and they're profiting off of a big way by revictimizing these families. And I'm sorry, but I'm just not okay with that, everybody. And if you're okay with that, I strongly suggest that you stop and really question your critical thinking skill. I'm more than willing to listen to somebody who has actual evidence somebody else committed this crime. But until then, you have nothing. You have no proof somebody else committed this crime. Here we go. November 11th, 2020. Medill, this is Northwestern University newspaper, okay? And they're discussing a alleged potential serial killer in Chicago, in the state that I live in. All 21 DNA samples from a series of female homicides that have occurred in Chicago since 2001 have been analyzed, a Chicago Police Department representative confirmed. And they were trying to link all these to one serial killer. However, the results complicate the theory that a serial killer is behind these 50 strangulations and asphyxiation cases. None of the 21 samples cross-match to each other, nor do they match the DNA profiles in the database, et cetera, et cetera. Here, this is the important point. You scroll down here and you look at the bottom of this. It says, out of the 50 unsolved cases, and these are strangulation cases, all of them, close, hands-on, to your neck, strangulations. Out of the 50 unsolved cases, only 18 yielded the 21 DNA samples. So out of 50 unsolved cases, and these are strangulation cases, out of 50 of them, only 18 produced DNA evidence, even though that person's hands were on that person and they were in close contact with them. So when you say, how could there not be a DNA of Richard Allen's at the crime scene? Well, there's firsthand evidence of 50 different strangulations, and they only found DNA evidence in 36% of them. And that's a Northwestern journalism story from Medill University, one of the highest journalism universities that you can study at in the United States of America. So if you want, you can feel free to go to the richardallenjustice.com website and come to your own conclusions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would urge extreme caution, though, believing everything that you read on that site, because, again, as we've shown here in this video, a lot of it is complete bullshit that's provably false, that stretches the truth, that tells half-truths, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which is what the jobs, it's what the defense does, and it's what all these raving Allen-supporting lunatics do. During some of his confessions, Wallace said Allen gave specific details about the crime, telling her he, quote, slashed the teens' throats and put branches over their bodies. Now, see, this is why the leaked crime scene photos were a huge problem by the defense team. Honestly, I think they should have been kicked off the case just for letting that happen, whether or not it was somebody else, believe the Western, somebody else gaining access to them, and the defense team that, said it was because they left them unsecured. And that's when you had the whole goal situation where people were alleging gross negligence, blah, 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 blah. And honestly, it's astonishing to me. It's astonishing to me that they left this defense team on this case, knowing that they potentially compromised the integrity of this trial, because sticks on the bodies are something that was not known for sure until those crime scene photos were leaked. When Richard Allen is there talking to a psychologist and telling them, I put sticks on the girl's butt. Now, he's in jail, okay? So unless somebody's feeding him this information, there's no way that anybody could have known that. So either he's seeing it on TV or through some secondhand source, or he's being fed that information. So again, what the defense team allowed to happen potentially jeopardized this case and tainted this case, because then if Allen comes forward later and says, oh, well, I put sticks on their bodies, et cetera, and I put them in this pattern, and this stuff was leaked, whether intentionally or not, by the defense team, which it was, then Allen confessing all this stuff and these specific details becomes useless, and the defense team knows that. And it covers their client's ass, and honestly, the fact that there's no repercussions for that disgusts me. Just as much as rickallenjustice.com, everybody, disgusts me. And it should disgust you too. And it should disgust the victims' families that there's people out there simping and supporting a convicted double child killer that they want back out on the streets. Thanks for watching, everybody. God bless you all. And continue to put good into the world. Shine light on the truth. And make the cockroaches that are trying to let this man out of jail run and scatter as far as humanly possible. Because that's what they are. And more people need to come out of the woodwork and say it to them, to their faces, on behalf of the families. I'm so sorry that any of you have had to go through this, Libby and Abby's family. And I'll continue to fight for you and to fight to keep this man in jail where he belongs for the rest of his life, if I have to. Take care, everybody.